Well, Matt, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today, my friend?
Good. Thank you for having me, Keith.
Good to have you on. Love to talk about this topic. I've just finished some of my work in college, so for all those who have not started yet and have more to do, this will be a good way to kind of give them some advice on how to do that well.
Yes.
So I love to ask my guests this question. It's one of my two favorite questions. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It is a good question. I think the best piece of advice that I have received, just because I come from, an education side and not a business side, so I've been learning about the business side of things, is some degree of perseverance, some degree of, it's not about whether it worked today. It's not about whether it worked yesterday or tomorrow. It's about whether it works in the long run. If you go to the gym today and you work out, you probably won't be in shape tomorrow. And if you go tomorrow, you won't be in shape the day after that. But somewhere, I don't know if it's 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or a year, at some point you will start to see the difference. And I think that piece of advice, the core of whatever sits in that philosophy, has been probably the most integral thing insofar as me going forward as a business person and just as a person in general.
I love that. So perseverance is kind of your key word there.
Yeah, I think it's perseverance, resilience, in that family.
Yeah, that group of wordings that we kind of like to stick to it to this. When things get tough, the tough get going kind of a.
Exactly.
I love that. I'm always curious about, you talk about your background and your history, but I'm always curious about people like yourself. Who are some people in your life who serve to be an inspiration to you or maybe a mentor for you along your journey?
That's a tough one. I mean, I feel like in the situation that I'm in, there's just so many people that you have to have as mentors. I have like a personal business coach who is fantastic and who every day is kind of telling me, a lot of what I just said, right? Where he's saying, just because you did outreach to this person and they didn't respond, it doesn't mean it's not working. To all the people who help keep me, healthy, right, and help me kind of keep my diet on track, my exercise on track. I think if I had to kind of go with like one person who has served as like a mentor, I would probably have to go, and I'm going way back here. I would probably have to go with somebody like Marcus Aurelius. Stoic philosophy is something that's of great import to me, and just the idea that all we can do is put our head down every day and be a good person and focus on what you can control, I think gives you a degree of sanity, a degree of control, and yeah, really just a degree of control over what you can do in your life. And I think that has allowed me to kind of move forward as a business person, as an individual, as a member of a family, as a friend, in kind of all those ways.
I love that. It's really good. So now let's get into your journey. Tell us about your journey and what led you or inspired you to start MRH Education.
How much time do you have? So MRM education, MRM education started because I mean, if you go way back, it starts at some point. I'm in high school and I realized that writing is a skill that I have. It's just one of those things that feels right to me. Some people can play the piano, other people, they are really good at sports. Writing always it worked for me. And so when I got to college, I was helping support students who needed extra help, working through the university, working as a private business person, just kind of giving students editing services, stuff like that. So when I got out of college, that led to me getting a job as a private tutor. And I was working with students on that end to help them edit their essays, edit their work, kind of complete homework. A lot of students who had English as a second language. And when I was in that private tutoring world, I began to see that there were companies who were bringing on tutors, and these companies were charging $200-300 an hour for their services, and the tutor was making something like $25 an hour. And
Wow.
I was like, that's crazy. Like, I understand, you got to pay bills, you got to pay taxes, there's overhead insofar as owning a business and all of that. But at a certain point, it turns into greed rather than just, wanting to turn a profit and be able to do this. So my philosophy was, look, if you can charge all this money and there's a market here, I could probably pay my tutors $75 or $100 an hour. I could drastically increase the service and the personal support that I'm giving these people, and I could still make a really, really good profit. Maybe I won't be a billionaire tomorrow, but I'll still be doing okay, you know? And so those two things married together. really having that educator background, wanting to give students personalized support and knowing how important that was for students, and also wanting to get into the practice of being an ethical business person. Those two things together were the onus for beginning MR.
So I, being the first one in my family who went to college, there were a lot of things that I just didn't know. And because my parents didn't go, there were things they didn't know. If you are talking to a high school student now who's thinking about college, it would have been helpful for me to know what are the things I should be working on, even in high school. Because when you think about it as a junior, you've already missed a lot of deadlines. You've missed a lot of things you should be doing, a lot of things that your resume may make you more appealing, especially to talk about Ivy League schools. So kind of give us what are the things that students should be focusing, and parents, if their kids are thinking about going to college and they're just maybe a freshman in high school.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great question. So many people come to us as seniors or juniors, and they go like, "What do I have to do?" And I'm sitting here thinking there was a lot that you already should have done. But I think so. There's a whole lot of things that you can do, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the activities that you can do. Getting involved in sports. Obviously, you want to get good grades. You want to take the standardized tests and do the best you can there. But I think like the number one piece that I think students and parents need to aim for is getting involved and getting interested in. So find out what it is that you really, really like. And I don't care what that is. I don't care if that's fashion. I don't care if that's video games. I don't care if that's being a firefighter. Find out what that is and then pursue it relentlessly. Because there is this pattern where students they kind of do what they think the colleges want them to do. I remember I was speaking at a conference last year, and there was probably about 1,000 people there. And I was like, "How many of you play a musical instrument?" And every hand goes up, right? And then so I asked, "So how many of you are actually interested and passionate about that instrument?" And I would say like maybe 10% of the hands stay up. And this is where we're at, right? Is everybody's doing these things because they think it's good. But what you really want, what the colleges are really looking for, is this degree of intellectual curiosity, this degree of I'm passionate about this thing and I know how to go after it. Right? I'm looking at you and I'm going, I know you're a reverend. We've had some email correspondence before this, so I know you're involved in faith and in God. But then I'm also looking and I see a ton of books behind you, so I'm going, well, clearly, Keith is he's a reader, he's a scholar of some sort. But then I'm seeing that there's a katana, right? There's a sword on your bookshelf. So I'm going like, what's that about? Let's talk about that, right? And so if I'm working with you, or if I'm working with your parents or whoever it is, I'm trying to figure out. So, my man is big into faith. He's big into reading. What is this? What's does he love Japanese history? Where is the crux of these things? Because I'll tell you what, when you apply to college, there's going to be zero other people who are saying, the two most important things in my life are God and Japanese history. And these are how these two things
Right.
come together, right? And that's how I really kind of want families and students to think about this from the outset is what does set you apart? And it's not your grades, it's not your test scores. You want those things to be good, but there's something inside you. There is the God who meets Japanese history that is going to make you unique and it's going to make you different and it's something you're passionate about. And I bet you that only you, Keith Haney, can tell me about how those two things intersect. And it's probably a fascinating story.
That is cool. So you just tapped on something I want to go deeper into. So you talk about helping people find their academic curiosity. What are some things as you as a working with a student try to help them figure out, what is that thing that makes you unique? What are the questions you're asking students? You kind of ask me some of them, or maybe they should be thinking about to really delve into what makes them unique.
Yeah, so I think a big part of what we do is fostering like an emotional intelligence, right? And starting to look inward and discover the things about yourself that do make you tick. I think in an age of social media, an age of hyper distraction, it's easy to just kind of like be a little bit like water and follow the easiest path, right? You can doom scroll on Instagram, or you can kind of go just hang out with your friends. But our journey is to kind of teach the students, hey, this is where I really am starting to kind of like grab onto something. So I think our process is when you're a freshman, when you're an eighth grader, even really trying to get out there and try a number of things, right? Get involved in the chess club, start a YouTube channel, right? And you'll do all these things, and some of them will really click, and other ones will start to fall away. So I think for us, it's really just about opening the minds and kind of connecting students and families with the opportunities that are going to help them see what those things are. On the academic side, I think a big thing is as educators, sometimes people fall into the trap of trying to tell you what to think. And I'd be curious to know what your opinion on this as a reverend is, right? Because in essence, you're like a man of God who is also an educator, who is also a therapist, right? You fall in that entire purview. And I think from the purely educator side, my job is to make sure that people understand I'm not teaching them what to think, I'm teaching them how to think. And I think when you make that paradigm shift, people are able to find their way. Do you see the kind of same things being, a man of faith and guider in that way?
Yeah, because so in my pastoral role, we all come down to like an education. There is truth, and you want to make sure that you understand truth. But my doctorate's in education, so I've got a chance to delve into the educational part of that and learn there is a way to teach and to educate in a way that I think we sometimes forget, because you're right. You want to engage the mind. You want to engage people thinking. You don't want to think for them. You want to open their minds so they learn to think for themselves. And so, yeah, and then there's that counseling part of you can't tell people what to do in counseling. You can only draw out of them what they want to do to make the change happen in their life. So you got to you can't push people in direction. You can guide them, but in the end, they have to make the choice themselves as to whether or not they want to go down that path or not.
Exactly, right. And I think that's a huge part of where we are in the college admissions game is, a lot of people want to go like, hey, should I do this major or should I do that major? And I'm going, well, what are the things that interest you? What are we have to kind of reverse engineer that question. Because if you're taking a path because you think other people want you to take it, or you think it's going to be the path that gets you into that school, it's really not going to serve you, right? It's kind of that like false idol in that way where you're chasing the wrong thing and you're not really being true to yourself. You're not chasing the way you started that answer, right? With there is the universal truth. And that's where I think we want to get people to.
Yeah, I remember my first year in college, I was going to major in business, I think. And all of a sudden I discovered that I really like computers. And so I ended up changing my major to computer science with a business minor,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of fun to do because I kind of combined computer programming and business into my major, which had nothing to do with my next degree, which was in theology, or my final degree, which was in education. So none of my degrees actually match, but they're all things that interest me.
Right. And then here you are now, a bit of a polymath, right? Just kind of, just interested in learning,
Right.
right? And now as a
Right.
profession,
Exactly.
as a pastor, as a podcast guy, you're a communicator, right? That's really what it comes down to.
So I know people who tell their kids, or their kids come out and say, I want to go to like Harvard, or I want to go to an Ivy League school. And so I think they approach that with, what do I need to do to get into Harvard? Not really sure why they want to go to Harvard other than the fact that it's Harvard. So as you're working with students who are trying to find that space, how important is it for them to understand that it's not about the name of the school as much as, does that school match what their interests are?
Yeah, I would say that you just described one of the number one issues that we have when students come to us or when parents come to us. Because I've had students come to me and go, well, I want to go to Stanford and I want to study business. And I have the unfortunate task of letting them know that Stanford does not have an undergraduate. Right. So the next question is, right. So the next question becomes, why? Why do you want to go to Stanford? Why do you want to go to Harvard? And if the answer is because it's Harvard, because it's Stanford, because it's whoever, I tell them flat out, that answer is not good enough. So there is to some degree a way that you can sort of break it down to show like what these different schools want. For example, Penn really wants business leaders, right? Those are the people who are going to generally gravitate to Penn. People who are interested in business, they want to be CEOs. Yale, on the other hand, they gravitate towards artists. They have an unbelievable acting program. It's the class of the country. And they want poets, they want songwriters. Harvard, on the other hand, wants people who are going to kind of be in public service. There is a disproportionate amount of senators and politicians and government and civil servants that have gone to Harvard. So there is a way that you can gain it to a very small degree. But ultimately, the question has to be, yeah, why is this? And if you look on every college application, there's a supplemental essay for almost every college application that's going to say, why us? Right? Why do you want to come to Harvard? Why do you want to come to Stanford? And that question needs to get hyper specific. That question has to start talking about professors and the research they've done. It needs to start talking about value systems and how they are not just compatible with you, but how you're going to excel within those value systems. So it's a conversation that we have to have early, and it's a notion that we constantly have to disabuse people of, which is you need to make sure that you're not just college is not the end goal. College is a step along the way, and you need to make sure that you're going not to Harvard just because you want to go to Harvard, but you're going to succeed at Harvard. And if we need to kind of shift that and say, well, maybe Penn's a better fit, or maybe Princeton's a better fit, or maybe Bucknell or UCLA, then we have to really have that conversation. Some people are a little more willing to hear that than others.
Right. So I remember, let's jump to, you've gotten into your dream school. You're starting to now adapt to being away from home, maybe for the first time. Are you discovering that students today are dealing more with mental health and confidence issues in that first year, particularly of school? And if so, how do you help students to prepare themselves mentally and confidence wise for that leap from high school to college?
That is, yeah, that's again, how much time do you have? It is, I think mental health issues go well beyond what students are dealing with in higher education right now, because I see it on both sides. I see students who they're struggling with mental health because of the pressure that is required to get into some of these top schools. I've seen mental health issues on the other side as well, where they're dealing with, being away for the first time, or they're dealing with an entire new paradigm of living, essentially. So it really ties back into what I was talking about earlier, where our job is to help you discover the things that you are most interested in. There is no way to avoid the growing pains of moving out of home for the first time, living in a dorm for the first time, having to deal with a roommate who may or may not uh, your proclivities, who may be disgusting or maybe who, they're kind of a jerk. There's no way to solve for those things. We all have to deal with those obstacles. So our job is to get you to, one, make sure that you see college as, this is the opportunity for me to really pursue the thing that I love. Right? If I'm here just because I feel like this is the next step and I'm majoring in math because I want to be an investment banker to make a ton of money, but I don't really care about these things, then that messy, mean roommate becomes a much bigger hassle. But if I'm here studying what I care about, I'm studying politics and government because one day I'm going to run for office and I'm going to help solve that, the roommate becomes a much smaller issue. And that's where we really want to push them to kind of understand that. But the other piece that we have to kind of help them with is understanding emotional resiliency. When they're applying to college, they think, and I think a lot of people think this, that if I just do enough work, if I just do enough things, if I just pay enough money, I can get into the school that I want to get into. I can get into Harvard. And the reality of that is not the case. If you're a good enough student and we say, great, you're Ivy level quality, if we apply to 5 Ivy League schools, you will likely get into one. Will you be able to pinpoint which one that is? Will you say, hey, I want Cornell, so we're going to Cornell? It's just not that game, right? I have had students who have gotten into UC Berkeley while being rejected from UC Davis. The process is very opaque. So when we are working with students, there's a big understanding of, you're going to have to learn to deal with setbacks. You're going to have to learn to deal with adversity. And this is a big part of that. If they don't have that going into the college process, that's where I find that they're not able to adjust as well once they're at.
It reminds me of that wonderful scene in the Spider-Man movie when they're trying to all get into Harvard and only one of the 3 of them does.
And that is very much a reality that kids are facing.
Right. And they're devastated and their whole world comes crashing down.
Yep.
And
And
he
that's a
goes and
big
messes
piece.
up the entire metaverse. Right.
Yep, right, and it's the entire right, and that's the entire thing, and that's what we have to do from the outset, right? We are trying to save the entire metaverse here by letting students know you might not get this one. You will get in somewhere that is right for you, but you might not get the one true, the one true love for you. So don't ruin the whole world.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. So I'm sure you've worked with a ton of students. Can maybe give us one of your success stories that just really kind of stands out in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the ones that I'm probably most proud of was we had a student on the spectrum and he was real big into fish. Loved fish, loved the outdoors. And he was a decent student, a real nice kid, fun to talk to, could be a little bit, could take a conversation to a little bit of a place where socially, I think, somebody who wasn't familiar with working with someone on the spectrum would go like, this is a little strange. But anyway, so he had decent prospects, but he loved the outdoors. And so what we did with his application was we focused it all on agriculture and land management, and we said just lean into this. And there was some reluctance there from the family because they were like, I don't know, it was a little alienating for a lot of people because he would talk about these fish in a way that you would go, how is anybody really supposed to identify with this? It's very, very esoteric. And so one day he's out and he's like cleaning up the river, the brook that runs in his backyard. And he's always out there making sure that everything is kind of good because he knows that pollution can, mess with the ecosystem. He cares a lot about that. And one day he's there and he realizes that there's this certain kind of fish is in the river. And I can't go into the details of this because it is above my head. But essentially, because these fish had not gone to the ocean, they were taxonomically a different kind of fish. So essentially, what he was able to discern was that because this fish was where it was a different species of fish that had never existed before. So I said, okay, great. Like, let's run with this. Let's run with this. And we got in touch with the local wildlife group and we got in touch with a couple of biologists. And he winds up doing an AP independent study with them as they're doing research trying to confirm that this actually is a different species of fish, what this means ecologically for the Bay Area. And he winds up pursuing this actually as a research project in the greater Northern California area. And we wrote all about this for his essays. We talked about why he really cared about this. And ultimately, where he was looking at probably a mid-level school, he got into Berkeley. And so now he's pursuing like a natural resources and land management degree at Berkeley. And to me, it's like one of the preeminent examples of it doesn't matter what you're interested in. Be interested in something because it shows the schools that you care. It shows the schools that you have direction, that you have work ethic, that you have curiosity. And those are the kind of people who will become movers and shakers. And those are the kind of people that schools want.
I love that. That's really good. So what kind of feedback are you getting from students who you work with?
It's fantastic, right? So, with a lot of the like intensive mentorship stuff we do, from both the students and the parents are a little bit like, I wasn't expecting the mentor to be like part of the family, but like she's always there. She's there whenever we need her. Right. And so because they kind of work with them, the ideal scenario is that they're working with them over 4 or 5 years. That they will be able to grow close enough because the thing about college is, it's a personal decision, right? It's not just, hey, this is the best school or this is, the area of the country we want to go to. There's real personal implications with, how comfortable are you being far away from your family? Is there a legacy of schools that they want to go to? How does mom feel about the major? How does dad feel about the major? What are the implications for the other kids in the family? How much is this going to cost? And so when it comes to advising and being able to support you and let you know this is what you should write about, or this is the school that you should apply to, or this is what you should go for, it winds up being a decision that is bigger than just the student. And so for us to really kind of be able to make that mentor like a part of the family, someone who they trust, someone who they care about, somebody who they know will advocate for them, I think it takes the process of college counseling to a whole other level.
That's amazing. So, as a member of the National Association of College Admission Counseling, how do you stay updated on the latest trends? Because things are always changing in education and best practices with college admissions.
Through NACAC and another professional association that I'm a part of, HECA, the Higher Education Consultants Association. There is a lot of support within the community. Always people kind of posting in the forum going, hey, I have this really specific situation. I have this left-handed, red-headed student from Guam who's applying to this school, and I once heard that there's a scholarship for families who the dad is blonde. Anybody have any insight? Right. And so there is always people who are supporting each other through the Higher Education Consultants Association. I have my own personal mentor they set me up with so that I have access to somebody to ask questions, and that mentor, it's a symbiotic relationship, so we give back to each other. We are constantly given access to webinars with college admissions officers so we can get like details and information straight from the horse's mouth about should you submit test scores if they're below the range, or this is how we view the test optional policy at our school, or these are the majors that are impacted, these are the majors where we really want to bring students in. But so it's constantly just keeping your finger on the pulse across all the facets of the industry, because you are right, it changes from year to year and arguably from day to day.
Yeah. So, as you look in the future, where do you see college admissions going, say 5, 10 years down the road?
Oh, that's a tough one, Keith. It's definitely, I mean, there's
Well,
a couple of
that's
things
what
that
we're
I
here
can
for.
say.
We're here to ask you tough questions.
The tough questions, no softballs, no softballs on the Bridge Building podcast. I mean, I can definitely tell you this for sure. The test optional policies, some will remain. By and large, though, those will go. If you're a parent or a student that's wondering if in 5 years I'm going to be able to go test optional, I would say that is highly unlikely. What happens next, though, is I think I would be doing a disservice by trying to make a prediction, given the uncertainty that happened this year with all the free speech stuff on campus, going insofar as with Trump's victory last night, and what that means for the Department of Education. I would say that's probably the end of any attempt at student loan forgiveness. But there are, unfortunately, right now, more questions than answers. And I think with the recent news, there's even more questions surrounding that. So really, all I can say is that people like me and people in my profession are genuinely good people who are really just trying to answer these questions. Admissions people are not your enemy. They're not gatekeepers. They are really, again, just trying to provide the information and trying to make dreams come true. As far as where it goes in 5 to 10 years, I'll tell you what, talk to me in 5 to 10 years.
We'll do that. We'll come bring you back on in 5 years to figure out where things are. You know, one thing I have noticed from going back to school after being gone for a little bit is the culture of college campuses has changed and the finances of college campus has changed. I know for people who don't know this, that really colleges seem to make their money in really the advanced degree program, not undergrad degree programs. So if you had kind of advice for students who are looking for getting into their perfect college, what advice do you have for students thinking about that today?
Well, I mean, do you mean financially or do you mean just generally?
Well, I think financial is a big part that sometimes keeps parents from exploring it. So I'll ask you that question later. But just in terms of preparing themselves for the whole process, what do they need to be considering when they're thinking about a college?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so you got to consider all the different factors. Do you want big classes or small classes? Do you want to be in the city or do you want to be in the country? Do you want to be close to home or do you want to be far away? You got to consider all those things. I think you need to look into what makes a school strong in a particular area. You need to understand what kind of education you want to receive. Do you want a highly personalized, philosophically focused education? Right, then we're going to start looking at liberal arts schools. Do you want a more traditional research-based school? Then great, we're going to look at a larger research institution. And you need to start looking at what schools are strong in the areas that they're strong in. So, if you are looking for something that's more arts-based, then we need to start looking at the liberal arts colleges. If you want something that's more STEM based, then we're going to look at technology institutes. I think to answer your question about finances and what you said about a lot of parents don't even look, right? They assume they can. I think I get it. I was on a call with a university admissions officer last month actually, and that school's tuition is now $100,000 a year. Or not tuition, entire room and board plus tuition was over $100,000 a year. And the question was posed by one of my colleagues. So, what makes your university different that I should tell my clients to go pay $100,000 a year at your university versus the community college down the road or the state university down the road? Like, what is your pitch to us so that we can pitch it to them? And the person who was on the call essentially said, I am going to decline to answer that question because I don't have to answer that question. Essentially saying, we are the university that we are. And, our reputation is what people are paying that for. And so that's the attitude that some of these schools are coming at this with, right? It is, for lack of a better way, it's a little bit of a middle finger. And I think for parents, what you have to understand is there are lots of ways that you don't necessarily know about to pay for college. And there are a lot of people within my industry. I am not one of them because I don't specialize in the scholarship aspect. I don't specialize in the financial aspect. But there are a lot of people out there who know about every single scholarship. They know about every single grant. They know how to tweak the FAFSA so that, this income doesn't get counted towards the number that they're going to basically judge you on. And so what I would tell a lot of parents is don't count any school out. You don't have to go there if you get in, right? Don't count any school out. Apply to where you want to go. Make sure you're applying to a couple of schools that you know are more affordable, but apply to the ones that feel out of reach, and then explore your options for financial aid there. Explore your options for scholarships. Certain schools like Harvard, you need to make, but don't quote me on the actual number here, but you need to have, above a $250,000 a year income to wind up paying anything. A lot of students attend Harvard for free. So just understand there are lots of situations like that where you will get a lot of financial aid. Do not be turned off or scared away simply by the price tag.
Well, if I had known that, I'd gone to Harvard for my undergrad degree. So I'm curious, man. This is my second favorite question. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that we changed the face of education. That education is this highly politicized. It's a thing that we see as, teachers unions are pandered, and there's all the things made about tenure and teachers having it too easy, and then also teachers not making enough, and the burnout and the work that is required. I would like MRM's legacy to be that we changed the face of education, that we made it known that education is an investment that should be made by all parties, the government, students, and their families. That the industry in general was one worth investing in and creating, because ultimately that education that we give our students, that is the future of the country. And by not investing in that, and not investing in our teachers, and not investing in our schools, and limiting access to not just services like my own, but other higher education, limiting access to college, only serves to hamstring all of us. And I think ultimately I want MRM to have been a warrior in making education accessible to people.
I love that. So what key takeaways do you want the audience to leave from our conversation?
Easily, absolutely. Number one, don't try and get into college. Try and get interested in something. Try and get passionate about something. There's an adage sometimes I like to use with the kids is don't get interesting, get interested. That is far and away going to be the most powerful thing that you can do to improve your chances of getting into college, and more importantly, succeeding and being a happy, healthy individual once you are there.
I love that. Anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
I think so. You have some heavy hitters, Keith.
Thank you. So where can people find MRN and find out more about that if they have a child ready for college, or I should say, a child that's in 8th grade getting ready to think about college? Where should they find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. You can find us online at www.mrmeducation.com. You can follow me personally on Instagram at MattMcGee_college admissions, or you can follow us on Instagram at MRM Education.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to be on and give us some information about college and how we can do that and make that affordable. I love that idea of being academically interested, not interesting. So I like that idea of, finding what you're passionate about and living that out and letting that guide where you spend the rest of your career doing.
Do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life.
That's right. And they'll pay you for it. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Keith.